यार उतना स्पीड में नहीं चला जाता यार,
फोन करते थे ना,
भूल गया मतलब। और भी 4 लोग पड़े हुए थे तो वो लोग लाइक बोले कि 6 बजे का बस लेके आएंगे, तो मैं बोला ठीक है यार।
Let's walk into the forest.
We're going to take it and then
Here we are trying to look at some of the trees that we planted here at Sadhana Forest. Now, an extension of this idea of compassion towards the trees is also understanding what the trees need. So now we've understood that we need to plant only the trees that this land needs. Now we need to plant the trees in a way that the tree needs them. So I mentioned earlier, a part of this was the whole charcoal soaked in human pee, because that would be a slow release of the urine. Now, when we plant trees here at Sadhana Forest, we either plant them directly in the soil, but that only is in places where the soil is good enough for us to plant trees. Good enough for us to plant the trees directly in the soil. And in this landscape, as you would have seen on our walkway to the mud pool, not a lot of the soil is like that. In fact, we're trying to repair the soil to reach a point where we can do that more frequently. So the more common way for us to plant trees here at Sadhana Forest is with a mound. So this volcanic structure is our way of feeding a couple of needs for the tree. So let's start with, first, before we plant a tree, we identify the slope. So now, once we've identified the slope, we dig a water trench. We dig a trench in the shape of a little smiley face, or a half moon smiley. Any guesses as to why we dig a trench? For water conservation. Yeah, exactly. And it's a smiley face because the earth smiles for water conservation. So once we're done digging out that trench, we use that soil to build a volcano structure around this PVC pipe. Now we build it kind of like that. Usually we build it in such a way in which there's a flat top. Why do we need a flat top?
so that the water can
collection of water.
Exactly, collection of water, precisely. We have it even like a little bit tilted inwards so that when the rainwater falls, it'll stay on the top. If we have a mountain structure like this, the water will fall and then it'll just rush off and take away the topsoil with it. In that case, you're basically eroding a lot of the soil that we've spent all of this time to put together. Now, planting this tree above the soil has 2 important benefits. One, I'm not sure if you noticed, because I see a lot of you folks wearing shoes, but if you give the ground a good kick, you can see that it is very hard and compacted, right?
Yeah.
So for us to dig 1 foot into the soil and put a tree in there, we're going to be putting the trees up for a whole lot of failure, because those roots of the young trees would not be capable of penetrating through the soil. So what we need to do instead is loosen up the soil. So by digging out the trench, we're effectively loosening up the soil, and then we put the loosened soil around the tree. So now we're giving the tree 2 benefits. The benefit of loosened up soil and the benefit of being elevated, so that it has a little bit more of a buffer room before it reaches the hard soil. What is our motivation for doing this? Nature. We're trying to learn from nature, because nature is the best teacher we've got. From what we've learned for the last, well, minus the last 10,000 years, 200,000 years of our lives. So why do we need to plant it this way? The trees that we plant here at Sadhana Forest are what we call tertiary trees. Now I mentioned earlier that the acacia and the dodonia, which we have over here, a bunch of these little bright green leaves, the dodonia viscosa is a pioneer species, which means they're the first to go out. Then you have secondary tree species, such as our friends Hibiscus rosa sinensis. Well, a very beautiful specimen is right at the entrance of Sadhana Forest, so as we're walking back into the community, you'll see them. Now the Hibiscus rosa sinensis is typical of a secondary tree growth in this forest. They grow to about 3 to 4 meters in height. They're a perennial species, which means they live for a few years. And then when they die, their bodies fall to the ground, and over many, many generations of the secondary tree species dying, their nutrients get returned to the soil, and now you have enough nutrients to support the growth of tertiary trees, which are the ones which form the canopy. And these trees are the ones that we're planting here at Sadhana Forest. So if we were to look at the origin and genesis of a forest, A tertiary tree would take anywhere between 800 to 1,000 years, or maybe even beyond, for them to actually come into existence. But we don't have that kind of time. What we have is, well, so far we've had 18.5 years to grow all of these trees. So what we needed to do was sort of replicate what nature would have done. So one of those things is the covering of the leaves. So you can see over here that we got a whole lot of dried acacia leaves, which we use as the mulch. But secondly, we have to think about the loosened up soil. 1,000 years is a lot of time for insects to bury through. It's a lot of time for earthworms to dig through. It's a lot of time for the fungal mycelial network to break down the soil. It's a lot of time for the other roots of other trees to break down the soil. So when we loosen up the soil, we're only replicating what nature would have provided to this tree in the first place. Loosening up of 1,000 years worth of organic work. So this is what we call the bottle wick irrigation style of irrigation. So we have a 2-liter water bottle with a hole drilled at the bottom, and through this hole we have a rope going through. And this is a cotton rope with beautiful root looking ends to it, which is basically got by unwinding the ends of this cotton rope. And inside this 2-liter water bottle, we fill it up and we make sure that we got this whole M-seal or sealant or epoxy resin going on the outside to create a nice pressurized environment, so that when we fill the water bottle, it sort of stays sealed up because it's got a cotton rope here, it's got the M-seal, it's not going to go anywhere so quickly. Then we open it up just a little crack, and by allowing enough, just a little bit of air to go into this water bottle, and through the effects of gravitation and capillary action, the water goes down through the ends of this rope right to the leaves, right to the roots. And why to the roots? How would you drink water? Would you drink water like so, and then stick your tongue out and expect to get fed? Or would you put the water bottle to your mouth? To the mouth, right? Because that's where we ingest water. Now, where does a tree ingest water? From the roots. So why do we pour water on the top and expect it to go down? We're using up a whole lot of water in this kind of watering of the trees, in this kind of irrigation method. So instead of wasting all of that resource, which we need to be taking care of, we make sure that these water bottles go directly to the bottom of the roots, bottom of the tree, right to the roots, and thereby feeding them the water right where the tree needs it. Again, taking care to look at what the needs of the trees are rather than what is convenient and efficient for us.
So would that be the ideal thing to do for all the trees that are planted in cities too?
Ooh, that would be a good place to start, yeah. Because otherwise we're going to have to waste a whole lot of water pouring it onto the top and waiting for some of that to percolate down and then get absorbed by the tree. This way we're able to give this tree, say, 2 liters of water, and then we go away for like 2 weeks, and in those 2 weeks it slowly diffuses about 150 milliliters per day, effectively amounting to about approximately 2 liters of water.
And plastic the only way to go with the bottles?
It's a good question. As of now, this is what is available to us. We've tried other kinds. The glass shatters. Metal is super weird and gets super hot, and it tends to also get expanded a little bit. It's not the most efficient thing. If we were to have more wide-scale use of these bioplastics which decompose over long enough periods of time, maybe then that would be great. But in this way, we're also kind of acknowledging the fact that we do have a lot of plastic waste out there in the world. We need to start thinking about what we're going to be using it for. Exactly, and when you compare the effect of one plastic bottle to the tree, sure, maybe it's not the most perfect thing, but let's be honest, there's a whole lot of plastic going into landfills anyway. Might as well try to find a new purpose for this.
And then you take that, you no longer need it once the sapling's grown.
Oh, we take the pipe out. We take the pipe out the day we plant the tree.
And the bottle always.
The bottle stays with the tree.
Oh.
Yeah. Because sometimes the roots sort of grow through it and stuff, so we don't want to like uproot that. That would be
So you
less.
fill the water in sulfate on the intervals.
Yeah, so what we do is we mostly feed the trees which we've planted within the last year or two, the ones which need the most amount of attention. Because after that, we have to acknowledge the fact that these are drought-resistant trees, which are capable of handling these climatic conditions. It's just that they're being reintroduced in a very broken ecosystem. So when we do this sort of watering work, we only do this for usually the trees which we planted, say, up to maybe 2019. And then beyond that, we kind of hope and we kind of know over experience that these trees make it once they've been given that little push right at the start. Because the first 2 years are when it's super hot, and these are evergreen trees. So evergreen trees are used to growing in the shade of other trees. they're not used to being out in the open. So that's why they need all of this extra support that we can provide for them.
So is this how anywhere, if anybody were to go through afforestation, this is the process they use anywhere in the world?
No.
Or what do they do?
Well, it depends on what the needs of those respective ecosystems are.
I mean with the plastic bottle system of feeding the thing. Like,
I'm
do you
sure
know if there are
that-
any comparable studies of any alternate ways? I'm curious.
Drip irrigation.
Pardon?
Drip irrigation.
Drip irrigation comes in many forms with different kinds of materials being used.
No, drip irrigation also on the top only we put. So usually some people say that we need to water to the soil, not to the plant.
Well, watering the soil helps in the overall thing, but then here we're trying to focus our attention on making sure this water goes to the tree.
This you are practicing for quite a long time, it works
Yeah,
for you. Is it?
exactly. And also with the mulch and stuff, we're able to retain whatever moisture is already in the soil. So that when the rainwater falls, it goes through, it sort of seeps through,
Here
and then it
what
stays
the
underneath.
difference is that they are growing in a completely barren land, and from the open to sky land.
Yeah.
So much of sun, bright and everything. There they are introducing the whole thing. There it works better. That's what he meant.
Because if we were to if we were to try to feed the need of watering all the soil is very, very thirsty. We're going to be spending a lot of our time.
Soil means around that area only.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
telling, it is
but
not-
here in that case, that's the benefit of having the mulch, to retain whatever moisture is already coming down to the tree.
And why human excreta?
A very great question, and I will come to that when we get to that. So yeah, so we're already going to approach your question from before, why Gaushala? Okay. Are you guys okay? Are they getting a little restless with the walking? Okay, we're going to go see the cows now if they'd like to.
Okay.
Yeah, most certainly I can. But the thing is, if I'm coming here, I would want to come. I will have to find a place in Auroville, and
It'd be really awkward if I were to say that I don't know the code, right? Hey, Romy.
yeah.
Hey, look at that, it's Hari.
Second time closer, and
Hey, Penny. Hello, you're a lot closer. Helping out with the Gaushala, cleaning the food buckets, giving them food, brushing them down, and then preparing meals, ensuring that the hygiene stations are all taken care of, all of the water stations are all clean. That's what we do in the first seva, which happens from 6 to 8:15 a.m. Excreta,
That Panchagavyam, you use Panchagavyam for that?
Panchagavyam, and what is it?
Just taking care of them, maybe they're abandoned.
Just taking care of them, alright. Any other guesses? Manure, okay, we got manure.
Good energy,
Pardon?
good energy, positive energy.
Oh, like biogas?
Positive energy.
Positive energy. Oh, just them. Okay, cool. Yeah. Positive energy. Brilliant. Pollination. Cool. That's the first time I've gotten that answer. Wow, I'm really learning so much from you guys today. Okay. I'm going to ask you another question. And I want you to think about the answers that we got so far. Why do we have friends? For their excreta? For the Panchagavyam?
Again, positive energy.
Positive energy? To take care of them or to look out for them?
Okay.
Right? So now, these wonderful animals are what we would often refer to as rejects of the dairy industry. Because Hari over here, this massive bloke, is a male. Which means that in an industry which is derived by generating profit from the breast milk production, Hari is kind of at a disadvantage for that. So the fate of most male calves in India used to be that they would be taken care of until the point where they could till the fields. But now we don't need tilling of fields with cows anymore. We got wonderful tractors. We got a whole lot of mechanized equipment. So the fate of a male calf in India is usually death or abandonment. Abandonment because farmers don't want to kill these animals. But then there's no way for them to take care of them. And you don't want to have to deal with the blood being on your hands. So the easiest thing is to leave them be to their own devices. And they will get hit by vehicles, they will get stranded, they will be lost because they're looking for their families. That is the fate of the male calf. The fate of the female calf is arguably similar in that they are useful. So an animal's fate on this planet right now is either that they are too useful to us or they're not useful at all. And between those two, we find a considerable amount of suffering. Because the dairy calves, especially like Lucky over there, with the massive pointed horns, came to us very angry, very agitated, because she was used for her body to produce milk. Now, we forget that cows only produce milk when they have kids. Do you know how long it takes a cow to carry their baby in their womb?
9 months.
9 months. Do you know any other animal who takes 9 months? Human beings. So if we were to think of a little thought experiment, let's imagine a human and a cow get pregnant at the same time. They both carry their children to full term. And then at the end of that, the human gets to give birth to their child, hold their child, and love their child, and watch their child grow up, and comfort their child. Does that happen for a dairy cow? No. Whether it is Amul or Avin or any of the big dairy companies, not necessarily the ones beginning with the letter A, or whether it's your backyard farmer named Kannan, the fate is the same. All animals have to be manipulated by us in order for us to get something from them. Now we will often argue or hear the argument, oh, but it's only the excess milk. It's only what the mother doesn't want to give their child. But we have to ask a question. A, why are they producing in excess? We've given them a whole lot of hormones to produce this milk in excess. And secondly, we've just arbitrarily decided what is excess. We've said, okay, no, that's enough for you. Imagine if somebody were to do that to you while you were eating a meal at a restaurant. They say, oh, no, you've eaten enough. Like, I just took one bite out of my burger. No. Off you go. You've eaten enough. It's not very nice for us to have our fate and our lives decided for us, now is it? Now let me put it to you this way. 75 years ago, India was having to deal with the particular problem of one group of people deciding the fate of another group of people. You familiar with this? Yes. Yep, the Indian freedom struggle? Okay. Now, immediately after that, some of the people who got this freedom turned around and said to the women, the children, the queer folk, the animals, well, actually, you don't get freedom. Your fate is going to be decided by one group of people. It's not very fair, is it? So what we're trying to do over here is merely acknowledge the fact that these beautiful creatures wish to be loved in the same way that we wish to be loved. So the only reason why we put our hands on these animals here at Sadhana Forest is because we want to brush them. We want to replace the narrative of violence with the narrative of compassion. And that is what I'd love to invite you guys over to. If you have no other plans to come and join us on the volunteering, at least come spend some time here with the cows. I would say it is easily transformational. Yes, from a certain point of view. Yeah, exactly. Black gold. Now it only seems fitting for me to conclude the tour over here because we began at the kitchen, so logically this is the end. Now, that right there is our human manure from our toilets, which is our dry compost toilets here at Sadhana Forest, which is an incredible system in which we segregate the dry from the wet, because if any of the wet mixes in with the dry, it'll slow down the rate of decomposition, and that'll affect when we can use this as fertilizer for the forest. So we need to keep them separate at all times, and into the dry, when we're done pooping, we add in some sawdust. The sawdust helps to increase the decomposition, and it also helps to neutralize the odor. You can almost not smell that it's a toilet when you're there, unlike what can be said of a whole lot of other regular flush toilets. So now the compost toilet is incredible for two main reasons. One, it uses very little water. In fact, it uses only about 1 liter water per person per day, maybe even per use at the most, and that's about it. Now compare this with a regular flush toilet, in which a single flush will use about 10 to 15 liters of water, gone, literally flushed away. We're never going to see that water ever again. If it's lucky, it'll end up in a sewage treatment plant, but very often, let's be honest, it's going to end up in the oceans and the rivers. So again, when we think about the idea of our narrative, what's happening, there's a whole lot of water being used right now in just our daily lives in the city. And it's not by design of any one of us. It's not that any one of us are opening the taps and saying, ha ha ha, I want the planet to suffer. No, that just happens to be the architecture of our cities. We open a tap, we're getting water. We don't know where it's coming from, where it's going. Like I mentioned earlier, we're depleting the aquifers and not replenishing them with more water. Now when we think about things like the water shortage crisis which Chennai faced in 2019, it's very, very obvious because there are some houses where they said that one individual in one household was using up as much as 125 liters of water per day, just one person. Let's put that in perspective. Let's imagine that there are 60 people in the community at Sadhana Forest, 60 people cooking meals, let's say the sake of argument, we're eating very soupy meals and we have 20 liters of water being used for our cooking. It's pretty generous, I know. We don't have soupy meals that often. So let's just say 20 liters. Then we need to have our dishwashing station. So let's imagine this, 60 people eating 3 meals a day, that's 180 meals. And with those meals, you have a bowl, a plate, and a spoon, 3 dishes at least. That means for every day, you're going to have 540 dishes that need to be washed. If we were to use a regular tap, opening and closing it, it will take us maybe half a liter of water per dish just to get it clean. So that would mean 270 liters of water in the city. What we have is 6 buckets, each with 7 liters of water. It's about 42 liters. That means 42 really is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Because with those 42 liters, we're able to wash all of these 540 dishes. And then, let's say, after eating that and washing our plates, 60 people decide to go to the mud pool. You don't need to get water for the shower from that. You're just making use of whatever water is available on the surface, which is incidentally what all other animals are doing. We're the only ones who've gone underground. Even the elephant with a glorious trunk has not decided to dig underground for water. We're the only ones who've poisoned all of the water sources on the top or depleted them. And now we're like, okay, now we need to go underground. That's our only choice. Okay, so people going to the mud pool, 0 water needed for that shower. Then they come out, some of them need to use the loo. That's 60 people using the loo. That means 60 liters of water. So now you put it together and what have you got? Well, not bibbidi bobbidi boo. But what you've got is 60 plus 42 plus 20, which means 122 liters. Which means that within 122 liters of water, we've been able to cook the food, wash the dishes, and use the toilet for 60 people compared to 1 person in the city using all of that water for themselves. Now, this is not to say that we have to feel guilty, but we also have to be acknowledging the fact that this architecture of our civilization is not working in harmony with the planet around us. In one way, I would even say that it is almost antithetical to life itself on this planet. Because this is the second part of the compost toilet, which I really love. That it represents this change in the story that I've been talking about this whole evening. So now let's look at a regular flush toilet. You have a box, put your problems in a box, you press a button, all your problems go far away. And that's how we live. We're not having to deal with the consequences of our actions. Somebody else will have to deal with it. We'll have somebody else cleaning up the streets. We don't have to worry about the littering. Somebody else will have to pay the price for the fact that we're buying cheap clothing. It'll be the rivers of Indonesia which is paying the price. It'll be the children who have to give up their childhood so that we could make that clothing. When we buy animal products, it is the animals whose families are torn apart that pay the price. And this is how we're living on autopilot. It's so convenient because we don't have to think about it. But the more that convenience brings to us, the more suffering is being inflicted upon this planet. So now let me present to you an alternative. The compost toilet. You have a box, put your problems in a box, you open it up a few days later and your problems are still there. They haven't gone anywhere. You have to deal with your problems. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to move it around. You have to work with it. You have to smash through it. You have to process it. You have to understand it. And very often you're not just dealing with your own problems, you're dealing with other people's problems as well. But that's what it means to be a social animal. But now the brilliant thing is, you allow that to fill up, you cover it up with a tarpaulin, you allow yourself to process it, understand it, you look at that, and you try to see what is my place in this wonderful ecosystem. Then you can use that to regrow a forest. So there's no reason why we cannot put our waste back out into the planet. The only reason we think that we can't do that is because we have this idea, this mythology, which says that we're separate from nature. If we're better than nature, then we're separate from nature. And if we're separate from nature, then we can't put what comes out of our bodies into the earth. Oh no, like cow dung is fine because cow dung it's natural. Cows are good animals. No, not us. We're separate from this ecosystem. See how weird it is? And it's only because we've told ourselves that we don't belong to this ecosystem. If you turn on the History Channel at night, you get all kinds of theories about how aliens mated with apes, and I don't even want to go there. It's all this refusal to acknowledge the fact that there's beauty around us and that we fit into this ecosystem. So for me, the compost toilet really represents that change in the narrative, that we can put ourselves back into the ecosystem and that there's a way in which we can contribute back to our planet. It doesn't always have to be about what we're taking. And with that, we're able to create all of this, which is a home for all of them, and them, and them, and all of the little grasses, and all of the little shrubs, and all of the insects that were walking around our feet all through this tour. Every single one of this has a home because of something that we would have otherwise called waste. And that's what I invite you to come and join us on. Thank you very much for your time. We can make our way back to the main hut. Thank you.
Time is 6:26.
साधना फॉरेस्ट का एक टूर ख़त्म होने के बाद वो एक्चुअली बताते हैं कि व्हाट इज़ साधना फॉरेस्ट। उनका जो कम्युनिटी स्पेस है वहाँ पे एक मूवी चलता है और फिर उसके बाद आप अगर फ्राइडे को जाते हो तो वहाँ पे एक वेगन डिनर मिलता है। सो आई वाज जस्ट डूइंग माय डिनर, जो मेरे को मतलब बहुत यूनिक लगा और बहुत अलग लगा। ज़िंदगी में पहली बार मैं ऐसा कुछ डिनर खा रहा था और उसके साथ वहाँ पे जो मूवी शो एक्चुअली हो रहा था तो वो कम्युनिटी स्पेस में खाली इलेक्ट्रिसिटी है। साधना फॉरेस्ट के बाकी जितने सारे स्पेसेस है वो शाम के टाइम पूरा अंधेरा ही रहता है। वहाँ पे वो कम इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, कम सामान और मिनिमलिस्ट लाइफस्टाइल जीने की कोशिश करते हैं। सो दैट इज़ द लाइफ एक्चुअली इनसाइड साधना फॉरेस्ट। मैं थोड़ा सा जो वहाँ पे रह पाया उसका ही मैं बता सकता हूँ अपना एक्सपीरियंस।
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's his. Are you talking? Oh yeah. Oh no. Ways in which you can help us grow Sadhana Forest so we can continue doing our seva for the planet. Now, one of the ways in which you can do this is by, we're kind of like the reverse of Fight Club. So rule number one about Sadhana Forest is that you do talk about Sadhana Forest. So on every bus that you're at, on every train, on every car ride, maybe not on the bus ride going back because everybody you came with now knows about Sadhana Forest, so maybe save your energy for the next bus ride that you're on.
Your time, and hope you enjoyed your time with the tour and the documentary. So right now we're going to start serving food. So you're welcome to stay where you are, or you're welcome to spread the word to different places. So we're going to start serving food right now, and the food will be at your service. So you're welcome to stay where you are. On the same note, if you have any questions, if you'd like to know what Sadhana Forest is, if you'd like to know what is life at Sadhana Forest, I would be available at your service, and please feel free to talk to me.
So now we are having our vegan dinner in Sadhana Forest. So you are loving it?
Not yet, but I will.
साधना फॉरेस्ट जाके पहुँचने के बाद जो बंदा बता रहा था, मतलब वो अपना ही थ्योरी बता रहा था, फिर उधर जाके थोड़ा सा रेस्ट किया और अभी फाइनली मेरा जो अपना डेस्टिनी या फिर घर ही मान सकते हो अभी ऑरोविल पे, पेबल्स कैफे। सो यहाँ पे आके मतलब कहीं पे भी भटक के आओ, इधर आके बैठ जाओ। सो दिस इज़ काइंड ऑफ माई होम इन ऑरोविल। सो आई सिट हियर, टॉक विथ पीपल। पिछले कई दिनों से हो रहा है तो यहाँ पे आके मैं बैठ गया हूँ। खाना काफ़ी अच्छा था, जो सोच के साथ काम कर रहे हैं वो भी काफ़ी अच्छा था, वो तो मैंने दिखाई दिया। एंड वेगन फूड हाँ बहुत दिनों के बाद खाया। सो दिस इज़ ऑल अबाउट माई एक्सपीरियंस इन साधना फॉरेस्ट। कल सुबह उठेंगे, बुद्धा गार्डन पे वापस जाना है वॉलंटियरिंग करने एंड उसके बाद फिर सोचते हैं क्या करना है आगे।